fall over. I wouldn't change the life I chose. No, 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 no. 'Cause rain falls on everybody, whether you're in or out of doors.
Hello, welcome to Living Arts. I'm your host, Jackie Suarez. Thank you for tuning in. Tonight we have a really great guest. His name is Adam Falcon. He's a guitarist, a songwriter, and he's pretty much a world-renowned guitarist. He's known and played with pretty much every big name in the business, and he's here tonight. So we like to welcome you to the show. Adam, how are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me, Jackie.
No, my pleasure. I had a chance to see you perform a couple of weeks back in Ossining, and I was just really into it. I had a great time there with, you were playing with KJ Denhert.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I jumped at the opportunity to get you on the show.
Oh, well, I appreciate that. It's always good to work with KJ. KJ and I have been friends for quite a while, and so you never know, when I'm working with her, there's always these turns that come up, things, occurrences and things, so I'm glad that you were there to, check it out and invite me on.
Yeah, absolutely. Your style of playing is just, awesome. I did a little research. I guess I'd already heard you, but I didn't really connect the dots because I had her album. So you played on a couple of her tunes. So basically, how did you start to play the guitar? How did you start doing that?
Wow. That was always something that I've wanted to do ever since I was like a little kid, 9 years old. It was like the first time I started actually making guitars. I'd build these guitars, and
wow.
From there, my mom saw that it was something that I couldn't get out of the blood, so she figured she would just break down and get me a guitar, and then maybe by the time I was 10 years old, I started taking formal lessons. Mm-hmm. And from that point on, the ball just rolled and got bigger and bigger.
So you mentioned that you kind of grew up with playing music in the house a lot. Were either one of your parents musicians?
Neither one of them. They both played a lot of music, played a lot of records and things, and always took me to concerts. And as a little kid, we'd go to see different shows down to the Apollo to see some shows. My dad would take me to Central Park to see a lot of the shows that they'd have in Central Park at the skating rink back in the day.
Yeah. So where did you grow up? You grew up in Harlem?
No, I grew up in the Bronx. My mom actually was from Harlem, and my dad was from New Orleans. So they had this mix. My dad was always playing these old records from New Orleans, people like Fats Domino and Louis Jordan and things like that. And my mom, she had a collection of records that I guess she grew up listening to, a lot of things like Nina Simone and let's see, countless. Dinah Washington, a lot of old,
kind of like old
soul,
blues songs.
Yeah, exactly.
Old blues singers.
That's right.
Yeah. So who was like kind of popular when you were growing up? What was like who were some of the popular bands?
Ooh, the list is endless. It seemed like every time I turned the radio on, I heard a James Brown record. So quite naturally, James Brown was just like the backdrop growing up as a kid.
It was like the soundtrack to your life.
Right, exactly. James Brown, I heard a lot of James Brown. And around that time that I grew up, there was also the Motown sound was just really starting to click. So you had James Brown, and you had all the Motown sound, which was Marvin Gaye and Tammy Terrell, the Temptations, the Four Tops, Diana Ross, the Supremes, the whole thing. And then James Brown had his mix. And then my mom listened to a lot of Aretha Franklin, so I had the Aretha Franklin growing up, and then Sly and the Family Stone as I got a little older, and then the Beatles quite naturally, and then all of these groups. And it was like this eclectic mix of all of this music. And I just like picked this group, this one.
So did you have an idea of what you wanted your music to sound like when you started playing? Or did you was it just kind of a mix of everything?
I just wanted it to sound good. Growing up as a kid, I was when I first started getting guys together and forming a band, I might have been maybe 15 or 16, and so your peer group could be real brutal. So it was like you'd stop playing a lot of the songs you heard on the radio, and the guys would just tear you down. Man, that's the worst stuff I ever heard.
Like doing like cover stuff wasn't really cool.
Exactly. A lot of cover things and playing talent shows. So primarily we just wanted it to sound good, and we wanted to just pretty much learn a lot of the songs that were popular back at that time period.
Mm-hmm. So what was like your first big break in playing somewhere or getting paid?
Wow. Oh, getting. Well, I was getting
I mean,
paid.
your break
but-
could have been, your break could have been just getting recognized at, I guess, a talent show or something. So
Yeah. Someone else asked me that question. I couldn't find it. They asked me what was how much did the first gig I ever had? The first gig I ever had. How much did it pay? I couldn't remember. I couldn't remember for some reason. It's like, that's a good question. But I guess the what I would consider like my first break was there was a singer named Clyde McFadder, and he was in a group back in the day called the Drifters.
Okay.
And a friend of ours, he was a little bit older than us at the time, he was a cab driver, and for some reason he had Clyde McFadder in the cab. And he recognized Clyde McFadder, and he started talking about this group that he had known, and it was a buddy of his, which was me. And he's talking and talking, and Clyde McFadder eventually said, okay, I'd like to hear these guys.
Mm-hmm.
And so Clyde McFadder came to hear us somewhere, actually in the Bronx. He came to one of our rehearsals we were having. And us being the age that we were looking at Clyde McFadder as this has-been, not knowing, that this guy's got this great reputation. I mean, as a real young kid, I had heard his records growing up, under the boardwalk and all of that stuff, and Little Itty Bitty One, whatever. So anyway, Clyde McFadder had come to the rehearsal, which was sort of like an audition for him. And he was floored, that these young guys could sound as good as we did. And so he booked some time in a recording studio at Atlantic Records.
Mm-hmm.
And we must have been 16 or 17 years old. This was my first time, and I think it was everybody else's first time, in a real, legitimate recording studio. And we were these kids in Atlantic Records, and we walked in, and we were like, wow, this one played here, and that one played in the studio, and this one. And we ended up recording a couple songs, and it came out great. So that I consider like my first real break.
Kind of catapulted your career.
Exactly. Because I've always wanted to have some sort of career in music, whether or not it was teaching music, or whether or not it was working in the studio, or working in Broadway plays, any number of things. I just wanted to make a living in music.
Okay. So what was, I guess after that, did you continue to kind of do studio work full time?
No, because I wasn't, at that time, we weren't really focused on doing studio work. We were sort of, even though we had this vision of wanting a career in music, at the same time, you get your eyes on the big prize, wanting to become this successful band like all the bands in the day. We were listening to Kool and the Gang, the Ohio Players, these horn bands. We had horns in our band, and so we were like aspiring to be that.
Okay.
So that was what we were going for, and then as we got older, guys started going away to school, and the band sort of slowly disbanded, and I continued on, becoming a music major, and then right out of college, I had gone on the road, and I might have been at that time 21, 22.
Where'd you go to school?
I went to school, junior college, Bronx Community College, 2-year program. I was a music major, and I loved the idea that I was surrounded by great musicians and wonderful teachers. I didn't like the idea that I had to go to school every day, because I was ready to go on the road and become this musician. But it was such an eye opener for me, because the things that I had learned in that 2-year time is like I'm still applying some of those same things today.
Sunshine woke me up this morning. It came creeping round my door. I said, couldn't this be undaunting? Something less or something more. Open my eyes as I lay sleeping. I said, man, won't you be aware that the hours you spend dreaming, you can move on out of here. Sunshine came today. Sunshine, open up the so glad I'm alive. Say, if I could live my life all over, I wouldn't change the life I chose. No, 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 no. 'Cause rain falls on everybody, whether you're in or out of the door. Sunshine woke me up this morning, got me up, came tipping round my door, just tipping, tipping. I said, could this be a dawning? Something less or something, oh, yeah. Sunshine came today. Sunshine opened up the way. You know, sunshine taught me to say, I'm so glad I'm alive. Say, sunshine, 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 sunshine. Got me up, set me on my way. Got me up and on the day I say sunshine.
So being on the road, I mean, I know that I was just reading all these great artists that you've worked with. How did that all come to pass? Like, just from you being on the road and just meeting people, or because you've been with some really big names. Why don't you tell our audience some of the people that you work with?
Oh, if I can remember a lot of them. You know, I always
Don't
have
forget
to,
the George Benson
I
story.
have to start backwards, you know. George Benson, you mentioned George Benson, he was one. Roberta Flack was another one. There was a great singer back in the day named Phyllis Hyman.
I know Phyllis. I don't know her, but I know her work.
Yeah. Phyllis Hyman, a lot of the old school people I work. Did a tour with the very first tour I ever did was with the Bee Gees, and that sort of like opened the door to some other things. Worked for a while, a lot of R&B sessions with Freddie Jackson. I worked with the Village People in the studio.
How'd you lose that gig? They're awesome.
With the Village People, actually, that was a great record that I did. It wasn't with the original Village People because they had all these transitions and guys were going and coming. Mm-hmm. But I had met the producer, and he had this idea about doing a new Village People record, and he had gotten the original lead singer to come back and write these songs, and then the record was one of the great. They never really released the record in the States.
Too bad.
Yeah,
they just had the one album, right?
I don't really remember what that, because I never really toured with them. I just did this one record, a studio album, and that was a while ago. But they every now and then I see like different clips on YouTube where they play the song. You know,
Mm-hmm.
They had this one song that Debbie Allen came in and did a female rap. It was great, but this was like before she became Debbie Allen.
Oh, you know, she did Fame, and I guess she
Yeah.
went on to like direct and produce some things as well.
Oh, megastar.
So you actually had a tune that you did for George Benson that was nominated for a Grammy.
Yeah. The song that I had written is called In Search of a Dream, and the album at that time was titled In Your Eyes. And I had known George for such a long time. I used to study with him because he also at the time he was living in the Bronx. And so when we met, this was right before he became a superstar. And he was about to sign this new record deal with Warner Brother Records, and he was telling me he's about to change, his whole career was going to change, and he became this big superstar. And then shortly after that, I went on the road and did the whole thing with the Bee Gees, and our paths just separated for a while. Years and years and years later, after he was this big star, I ran into his producer at the time. I was in the studio with Rick James, mm-hmm. and Rick James was being produced again at Atlantic Studios of all places. He was in the studio of Atlantic Studios, and he was working on a record with Shaka Khan, and Shaka Khan was being produced by Arif Mardin. And so when Rick James had asked me to hang out with him and go to the studio, I had the privilege of meeting Arif Mardin. And I grew up like writing letters to this guy because he was this amazing producer. For those who don't know, Arif Mardin produced all of Shaka Khan's big hits.
Okay.
Everyone you can think of, and all of Aretha Franklin's Respect and all of these things. He was one of the guys behind all of these great records. I used to write him letters as a kid. So I just had to meet him. So when I met him, I just picked his brain, told him it was an honor to meet him and who are you working, what's the next artist you're working with? And he said, George Benson, and my mouth just dropped because it had been 10 years since I had seen him. And so I told Arif, I'd love to stop by and watch you produce some of those tracks because I know George. And he said, well, come down. We're here next week. George is flying in. At that time, he was living in Hawaii. So he said, George is flying in. Why don't you come down next week? So I go down and I see George, and we're talking and we're talking and we're talking. And George finds out that I had been writing these songs. And he tells Arif, well, Adam is a songwriter, and he's got some songs. They were looking for some material. So Arif said, if you've got some songs, we'd like to hear some songs. Why don't you bring a cassette of some of your songs, some of your material? So I went home that night and just listened to all the stuff I had. And the very last song I put this tape cassette together, maybe about 10 songs. I go back to the studio, and they pop the tape in. And it's about maybe 4 or 5 guys after one of George's sessions. They're all in the studio, and one song goes by, and everybody's still talking. 2, 3 songs go by, and everybody's talking. And I'm thinking, wow, this is going nowhere. I might as well just go home. And I'm starting to tell the guy, man, just take the tape out. I'll go home. Mm-hmm. And as I'm getting ready to say this, the last song comes on, and the studio gets quiet.
Okay.
And George looks up, and Arif looks up, and they said, man, we like this song. And it ended up getting on the album. And that was almost, 83 now when the record came out. And it was nominated for a Grammy. It was actually on the flip side, actually, of, there used to be a singer named Arif. No, not Arif, what was, Kashif. Kashif, and he had like hit after hit after hit back in the day. And the song that I had written was actually on the flip side of one of his singles. So I think the single was actually nominated for a Grammy, and the album itself was actually nominated for a Grammy.
That must have been awesome for you. Did kind of the offers pour in after that? Because you also wrote something else for him on another album.
Yeah. The offers didn't come pouring in. That would have been great had they.
Right, you would think after that.
You would think that, but a lot of people were like because to get a song on at that time, George. He couldn't do anyone. He was like one of the biggest selling artists at the time. So I had a lot of buddies that were like, wow, man, you got this song on this George Benson album. Man, what are you gonna do? It's like, and I said, no, I'm just gonna, wait, because I had no idea what that meant, and
right.
But I ended up buying a home from it. It was like,
oh wow,
yeah, that's what. So everybody was saying, George, I had this old beat up car, and one night I had given George a ride somewhere. He said, man, you need to buy another car. So when the song comes out, you either get a new car or a house. And I was like, yeah, right, okay. But then I was able to buy a home. I was still driving around another car, but
right, drive it till it's stops, it falls off the road.
Yeah. But years later, George happened to hear another song that I had written, and he fell in love with it. And at that time, he was being produced by another great producer named Tommy LaPuma. And Tommy LaPuma had heard the song, and so they went in the studio and recorded that song. And that one was on an album titled That's Right. And the song, they changed the title around, but the title is called True Blue.
Yeah.
True Blue, and that actually did pretty well also.
I mean, as an artist, which, I guess, would you find more satisfying? This, writing, or do you find playing on the album to be more exciting?
Well, the first record where he did one of my songs, I actually had a chance to play on that record, and I had arranged it for a number of reasons. But the second song that he recorded, I didn't play on that one. They had recorded that one at Prince's studio, and so Prince had like some of his guys play on it and a couple other people.
In Minneapolis?
Yeah, they went down there and just like some of the guys that played on some of Prince's other records had played down there, and they did down at Paisley Park.
So it wasn't the same kind of feeling?
Oh, it was great. It almost sounded like it was. It was almost like a Prince sound, but no singing. You had George playing.
Oh, okay.
but Prince he's you can't like put him in a box, so to speak. So the musicians that he's with also have a very good jazz background.
Okay.
Very well
Versatile.
versed. Yeah. And so these guys lit the song up, and it was great to hear it. They had to put their thing on. But to answer you, so I didn't really play on that. But I guess for me, I love writing songs. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, I love to be in the studio and performing. You know, I love to perform. That's like one of the greatest things, to perform.
So you made a kind of a point of saying that there was a point where you decided to stop touring and to stop writing things for other people and kind of focus on the style of music that you wanted to play and kind of developing your own sound.
Yeah.
And what was that like for you? What actually caused you to make that decision?
I had gotten tired going on the road. I had worked with a lot of art. At the time, I was working with a singer named Jonathan Butler. And we had just come from doing 17 dates with Eric Clapton. Mm-hmm. And I remember prior to that, we did another tour with Whitney Houston. And we were back and forth from England, because Jonathan at that time, he was based out of England, and we were traveling Europe and 3, 4, 5 times a month, back and forth just to Europe.
And it got to be too taxing.
Oh, it got to just, and then when one thing I started to discover, when the star went on break, the musician was unemployed. So you had to find more work with another artist. So I really had gotten tired of that.
Of being put on hold.
Yeah, being put on hold and just working with so many artists. And every time I'd work with all these artists, you know, it was always great because we'd have a great rapport. I always had a great rapport with the artists and a good relationship, and, you know, off stage, and we became friends with a lot of them. And they always would say to me, you need to do your own thing. Before it gets to that, you need to work on your own project, your own songs, your own material, your own this. Because a lot of them knew that I'd write songs.
So talk to me about Bohemian.
Bohemian 959.
Yeah. When you did that in 2010.
Yeah.
What was it like to do that?
That was a lot of fun. That was a lot of fun. For a number of reasons. We called it Bohemian 959. 959 is the street, is the address of the house on the street that I grew up in the Bronx. And as a kid, we were there, 15, 16, like I said, we were there every weekend, 365 days out of the year, every weekend. 52 weeks out, we were there playing.
Okay.
And so while we were there, it just had this feel. We were just playing as kids, and we would have these makeshift instruments. So while we were doing the record, years later, we were almost like, again, in a makeshift studio. We were in a loft recording. And the producer who had known me back growing up as a kid, he said, man, this is almost like when you were a kid in the Bronx.
Very organic.
Exactly. And we just set up shop, put microphones around, and record a record. And so we started to call it Bohemian 959, which was like a throwback to back to the day. And the record cover actually is me in front of the house as a kid back in the day.
It's a great listen. You know, I recommend everybody listening to it.
Thank you.
You know, unfortunately, we're going to have to wrap it up. Why don't you tell our audience how they can get a hold of you and information about your appearances and around the area?
Sure. I could be reached adamfalcon.com. And from there, it can take you to Facebook, YouTube, Reverb Nation, And even MySpace, if there's even still MySpace, I don't.
Yeah,
I'm
and
not
you were
even
telling me
sure.
you have a little blog that you're doing as
Yeah,
well.
and somewhere on the website there's a blog. It won't say blog, but if you find AdamFalcon.com, you'll see somewhere in there that there's the blog spot, or somewhere there's a blog spot. But you can also go to blogspot.com and search Adam Falcon, and you'll find it there as well.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for coming to the show.
Thank you for having me.
I'm crazy about your music.
Thank
I can't
you.
wait to see you perform again.
Thank you.
So definitely come and check Adam out. To all the Living Arts people, thank you for tuning in. I hope you've enjoyed the summer. We've been having a great time here in the studio. Like us on Facebook, go check out our website, and we will see you soon. Peace.
Holding on to a wing in a prayer. Closer, closer, and closer. I feel I'm almost there. The supreme, the sublime, all in a matter of time. Reaching for the top. I ain't never gonna stop loving you. No, never stop loving you. Nah, nah. I'm tired of crying. Lonely tears of pain. People dying. My heart filled with disdain. The brave, the strong, who will sing their song, R&B or pop. I ain't never gonna stop loving you. I ain't never gonna stop loving you. No, 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 no. You may be hiding and you can't tell secrets from your sins. Maybe hiding you can't tell secrets from your sin. Reaching for the top. I ain't never gonna stop loving you. No, I ain't never gonna stop loving you. I ain't never gonna stop loving you. No, 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 stop loving you, no. No, no. Stop loving you. Never stop loving you. Stop loving you, no. No, no. Never stop loving you, no. No, no. Stop loving you, no. Never stop loving you, no. Never, no. Stop loving you, no.